Namaste and a very good evening to all of you. I welcome you to my channel, The Outlier. My name is Mithun. In today's video, I'll be talking about how to create a data model using Power BI. Even before I proceed to demonstrate how to create a data model using Power BI desktop, may I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Let me begin by asking a simple question as to what exactly do we mean by a data model and why exactly are we creating a data model. Data model is the process of creating a link or a relationship between multiple tables from either the same source or different sources. Imagine that you have two different data sources. One could be from Excel, the second one could be a CSV file. There are some fields which are present in Excel, other fields are present in CSV. If you want to establish a link or a relationship between these two data sets using a common variable, you can go ahead and do that in Power BI. This process of establishing a link or a relationship between two different tables is called as building a data model. In the case of data model, as I mentioned just now, we are linking two data sets. That's because we want these files to communicate with each other. Once we are able to establish a relationship between these two files can be combined and we can go ahead and access multiple variables from either of the data sets. Power BI is not the only tool which helps you create a data model. You can also go ahead and create a data model using Excel, SQL, or some of the other tools. In Excel, there's a feature which is called as Power Pivot, which enables you to create a data model. As you can see here, this is the interface of Power BI. I want to establish a link between two data sets. Let me go to the field section, which is present at the right-hand side corner. As you can see here, it says you haven't loaded any data yet. It's absolutely right. I have not brought in any data into Power BI. Even before I import the data, let me introduce you to the file that I'll be working on. The first file is a Excel file. You can see here, the name of the file is what is called as demographic details. As the name itself suggests, this data has customer demographics. You can see here, the first column is customer name. The second column is segment. Then you have country, city, state, postal code, and region. So these are some of the demographic variables that are present in this particular data set. You can see some of the customer details like Aaron Bergman. Then you have Aaron Hawkins, Aaron Smealing, Adam Bellavance, Adam Hart. These are some of the customers, and we have their demographics. Let me quickly point out what is the sample size in this particular data set. If I select all the records here, you can see Excel says the count of values is 793, which means we have 793 records for customer demographics. Let me now show you the second file. The second file is called as product details. You can see here, this is the data set which represents the product details. Like before, we have a variable called customer name. So this is a very important variable, and I'll tell you why is this an important variable. The first column is customer name. Then we have product details like product ID, category, subcategory of the product, product name. You have other important variables like sales, quantity, discount, profit, and customer ID. So these are the four important variables that I have. I have sales, quantity, discount, and profit. What is interesting to observe here is that we have two separate files. Very important information like sales, quantity, discount, and profit are present in the second file, whereas customer demographic details like region, subcategory, so on and so forth are present in the first file. So how do I combine these two files so that I can create, let's say, region-wise sales. I want to show the distribution of customer sales based on region. This is where creating a data model or establishing a relationship between these two files will help me. Please observe the name of the file here is product details. To establish a link, what I need to have is a common variable. Unless you have one common variable in each of these two files, you will not be able to establish a link or a relationship. So it's absolutely important that you have a common variable. You can see here in the second file, there is a variable which is called as customer name. Let me show you the first file, which is demographic details. Here again, we have customer name. This is the first file. Let me again go back to the second file, product details. Let me examine the sample size in this particular data set. When you look at the sample size, the count of records here would be 9,994. Here, we have a larger sample size as compared to the first data set. Remember, the first data set had merely 793 records. The question is, why is it that we have more number of records here? Let's observe some of the cases. We have Aaron Bergman. This is the first record. Second customer is again Aaron Bergman. Third record belongs to the same customer, Aaron Bergman. Fourth, fifth, sixth also represents the same customer, namely Aaron Bergman, which simply means that there are multiple records for one customer. We have duplicate cases in the second file. Let me show you the second customer. You can see here, all of these records are for Aaron Hawkins. So again, the second customer has made multiple transactions, and therefore you have multiple records for the second customer. And here's the deal. When you are creating a data model, the first condition is that you need to have a common variable. And secondly, what is very, very important is that one of the data sets, the first file preferably, should have a common variable which is completely unique, which means that there should not be any duplicate cases, right? In the second file, I do agree that there are many, many duplicate cases. That is fine. But in the first file, namely customer demographic details, you can see here, Aaron Bergman, Aaron Hawkins. There are no duplicate records for any customer. So this is very, very important. In case you have duplicate records in both the files, you will not be able to establish a link between these two files. The first thing that I'll do is to simply go ahead and close the file. I've closed the first file. Let me go ahead and close the second file as well. I don't want to save any changes. Let me again go back to this particular folder. I've saved both these files, demographic details and order details, in one folder, which is called as merge1. Please observe one very interesting thing. The first file is a Microsoft Excel worksheet. The second file is a Microsoft Excel CSV file. So we have two different sources. If I have to just give you a small example, this is like, in case you have, let's say, river water, which is acting like the first source, and the second source of water could be, let's say, rainwater. What we are doing is basically, we are trying to take 1 liter of river water, pour it in a container. Secondly, we are also taking 1 liter of, let's say, lake water or rainwater and pouring it in the container. Now, this container is acting like a data model. It is linking two sources of water, right? So it does not matter what is the source of the two files. It can be from the same source, or it could be from a different source. We can go ahead and still establish a link. With this background, let me now come to Power BI. The first thing that I need to do to create a data model is to simply import the data set. As I showed you, the field section is completely empty here. which means that I have still not loaded the file. To load any file, there is a button which is called as Get Data button. Let me click on the drop-down menu here. Power BI displays the common data sources. The first option here is an Excel workbook. Since demographic file is an Excel workbook, let me go ahead and choose this particular option. This leads me to a new window, which is called as the open window. Here you can specify the location of the file. Let's say you have saved the file in C drive or D drive. You can go to the appropriate location and pull the file. This is the path, Mithun, personal, desktop, training, merge one. Here I have got my first file, namely demographic details, which is a Excel workbook. Once I've selected this particular file, let me go ahead and hit the open button. Once I click on the open button, this leads me to what is called as the navigator window. Under the display options section, you can see here the name of the file is demographic details. The extension of the file is Excel SX. Below this, it displays the table name, which is demographic data. So this is the sheet which I'd like to pull. You can see here, Excel has understood the format of the data and it is displaying a preview of the file. Do you notice anything interesting here? What is extremely interesting here is that the column heading is being read as column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4, which is the first problem that we have. There are two problems. The first one is the column heading is not recognized appropriately. And please observe the first row. The first row is displayed as null cases. Let me examine the third row here. You have customer name, segment, country, city, so on and so forth. Customer name, segment, country, city, these are the column headings. So I have two problems before me. One is that I would like to eliminate the null cases that are present in the first row. The second thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to promote or push up the second row, that is customer name, segment, country, and make Power BI understand that customer name, segment, country are the column headers and not the data records. So since we wish to transform the data, what I'll do is at the bottom half of the page, you have three buttons: load, transform, and cancel. If you would have been happy with the preview, you could have directly loaded the file. I will not load the file. Instead, I wish to make certain changes to the import option. So let me go ahead and click on the transform data button. So what this does is this fires a new window. You can go ahead and observe the top section. It's called as Power Query Editor. So this is the new window that's being displayed. This window helps me make certain modifications, make some corrections to the file. The first correction that I'd like to make is select the first row. I like to delete it. To delete it, what you can do is you can choose the button Remove Rows. Select this particular button, click on the drop-down menu. You have multiple options to remove. One is you can choose the remove top rows, or you can choose the last but one option which says remove blank rows. As you can clearly see, the first row has blank records. So let me go ahead and remove the blank record. Fantastic. What has happened is that the first row has been eliminated, and therefore the second row now has occupied the position of the first row. But what's interesting here is that the second row is actually the field heading. This is the column name. So what I need to do here is to solve this particular problem. How do I solve this? Use the first row as headers. You can see here, there's a button which says use the first row as headers. Power BI displays a short description. It says promote the first row of this table into column headers. Once I click on this, you can see here customer name, segment, country, city, state are all being pushed up and called as column headers. So we have solved the two problems. One is to eliminate the blank records, and the second problem is to promote the data records as field headings. You can see here under the right side, there is what is called as applied steps. So it says sources, navigation, changed type, and then removed blank records, promoted headers. These are some of the actions that I have taken here. It looks good. It looks fine. So what I'm going to do at this stage is to apply the changes and close the Power Query editor. So you can see here, close and apply. I'm happy with the look of the data set. You can see here, it is loading the file. There are 793 records which are being loaded in the fields section. If I go ahead and expand this particular button, you can see here, city, column 8, country, customer name, postal code, region, segment, and state are appearing under the demographic data. So we have successfully pulled this particular data into Power BI. What is the next step here? The next step is to pull the second file. Let me show you in the folder. I've already successfully pulled demographic details. Now I wish to pull product details. Observe the file format. It says CSV, comma, separated values file. I like to pull this particular file. So let me quickly go to Power BI. To import any file, you can choose Get Data option. One very interesting feature about Power BI is that it has the ability to pull data from at least 100 plus sources. So we don't need to worry about the format of the source data. Let me click on the Get Data button. Here, I will click on the option CSV. Since the second file has a CSV format, let me choose this particular file format. This leads me to the open window option. Here, I can browse the address of the source file. The source file is called as product details, and it is present in the merge one folder. Let me select this and click on the option open. You can see here, this leads to a new window, which is called as product details.csv. Clearly, the file origin, you can see here, it displays Western European. Delimiter is recognized as comma, and the data type detection is based on the first 200 records. Interestingly, there are no problems that I observe here. Customer name, product ID, category, so on and so forth are recognized as the column headings. From the first record onwards, you can see Aaron Bergman. Aaron Bergman, again, there are multiple transactions for each customer. So the data is sitting nice and pretty from the first record onwards. Since there are no transformations that I wish to make here, instead of clicking on transform data here, I'll directly go ahead and load this particular file. Interestingly, you can see here, the second file has been dumped into the field section. So this is the product details file. Let me go ahead and expand this particular button. You can see here, there are different fields: category, customer ID, customer name, discount, product ID, product name, so on and so forth. So the one question is, where is the data model? You might ask me this question, where exactly is the data model? To show you the data model, let me introduce you to a new view. Right now, the view that you're seeing is popularly called as the report view. At the left-hand side, you see 3 buttons. The first button is the report button. This gives you the report view. The second button is what is called as the data view. If you click on the data view, you can see here, Power BI displays the columns pertaining to the first data, demographic details. You can see here, product details. The moment I choose product details, it is going to give you the data view for the second data set. This is not very helpful under the current circumstances. I'll go ahead and click on the third view, which is called as the model view or the data model view. You can see here, let me remove this option. This is the model view. This is the name of the first table, namely demographic data. The moment I hover the mouse there, Power BI displays certain summary information like what is the storage mode, when was it refreshed, the time and date of refresh. You can clearly see here some of the fields that are present: city, column 8, country, customer name, postal code, so on and so forth. In the product details file, you can see category, customer ID, customer name, so on and so forth. Very, very interestingly, you can see here Power BI, my apologies, has automatically, I repeat, Power BI has automatically linked these two files. How has it linked? You can clearly see here, if I hover the mouse on top of the small little triangle here, customer name is getting highlighted in each of these two files, which means that Power BI has sufficient intelligence, it has sufficient smartness to recognize which is the common variable that is present in both of these files, and it has successfully established the connection by itself. Let's say you're doing this in Excel. In Excel, you have to manually establish the link. One advantage here is that Power BI automatically establishes the relationship provided the name is similar in both the files. You can see here it says 1 and there's an asterisk mark here, which means that there is a one-to-many relationship between the first file and the second file. I'll repeat, there is a one-to-many file. Remember, the first file, demographic data, had 793 records. There were no duplicate cases. We had removed the duplicate cases. In the second file, however, you don't have 793 records. You have more than 793 records. In fact, we have 9,900 odd observations. So that's why it says there's a one-to-many relationship. Be very careful. In case the file on the left side also had duplicate records, Power BI would have thrown an error message. It's absolutely important that in one of the files you have unique cases. That is very, very important. Now that we have been able to link these two files, it is like what we have done is we have collected rainwater. We have also collected, let us say, river water, and we have poured this in a container. Now, the client actually does not have to see this. He does not care about the relationship model that we have built. Let me go back to the report view. In case you want to access any of these fields, you're free to do this. You can access selected fields from the first file. You can expand the second file, and you can choose the second. You can choose selected fields from the second file as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make it slightly more complicated. Why should I restrict myself to only 2 files? Let me show you how to establish and create a data model with the third file. You can see here, this is the name of the third file. You can clearly see here, the third file here is called as order details. So you have name of the customer. Remember, this is the only name. This is not customer name. So we may have a problem in establishing a data model. The first field is name, and the second field is number of orders made by the customer. Aaron Bergman, he has made 6 orders. Aaron Hawkins, 11. Aaron Smelling, 10, so on and so forth. It will be interesting to observe what is the sample size in this particular data set. When I select all the records, you can see here the sample size is 793. So this is the sample size. So we have order details. I like to import this particular file as well and create a model with a third source of data. Let me go ahead and close this particular file. Go back to the folder. You can see here order details. What is the file format? It says comma separated values. Now, if we go back to Power BI, import this file. How do we import? You're already familiar. Get data. Here you can choose the option CSV. This is the file which I want to import. Once I click on this, it leads me to the open window. Here there are order details. You can also see product details. This is a file. The second file we have already imported. So I'll not bother with the second file. I'll just click on the first file, order details. Go ahead and click on the open option. You can clearly see here Power BI has recognized that this is a comma separated values file based on the first 200 records. The header is name and number of orders respectively, and the customer details are being shown from the first record onwards. I don't see any problem with the file format and such things. Power BI has done a good job of recognizing the column heading, and therefore I will not transform the data. Instead, I'll choose to click on the load button. You can clearly see here the third file, namely product details file, has also been loaded in the Power BI desktop. Now, what is interesting is to create a data model using the third file as well. To do this, let me now click on the model view. This is the model view. Interestingly, you can see here order details. This is the third file. There is no linkage that you see with any of the files. Why is this? If you carefully observe, the name of the field here is name. It is not shown as customer name. We have to be slightly careful here. You and I know that when we say name here, it is the customer name, but Power BI does not have sufficient intelligence to understand that name here represents customer name. So in the first file, you have customer name. In the second file, also you have customer name, but in the third file, you only have name, and therefore Power BI has not established any connection. Let me use the collapse button here. This will compress the data model. Now, what I need to do is I need to manually establish a connection. Automatic connection is not possible. Manually, I have to establish a connection. This can be done by dragging customer name and dropping it into name. I've just dragged customer name and dropped it into name. As you can see here, I'm forcefully establishing a link. It says 1 and 1. When you hover the mouse on top of the two triangles, you can see here there's a link that is established between customer name and name. So congratulations, what we have done is we have built a data model. The first file here is demographic details. It is talking to the second file, namely product details. The first file is also talking to the order details. So we have successfully established a link with 3 different files. Now, what is the great thing that we have achieved? The one great thing that we've been able to accomplish here is that we have created one container which is acting like a reservoir, which is acting like a pool of 3 separate files. I'm free to access the fields from any of these 3 separate files. So though you have 3 files, it is behaving like one big reservoir of fields. Now, let me go to the report view. You can see here the 3 files are displayed under the field section. Let me go ahead and click on the visualizations pane. You see 30 plus options. What I like to do here is to show you one small application or business use case of creating the data model. In the 5th row, second option is table. Let me click on table here. The moment I click on table, you can see here a visual representation of the layout of table is displayed. Observe what I do here. The name of the data set is demographic data. Let me click on this particular option. What I like to do is utilize one of the variables from demographic data. Which is that variable? That variable is state. I can drag this particular field, drop it into the layout in the left-hand side. You can see here, Alabama, Arizona, then you have California, Colorado, so on and so forth. So this is the state variable. This state variable is coming from the first field. Because I have utilized this particular field, Power BI says that it puts a tick mark here. I hope you can see a tick mark here. Power BI has put a tick mark to say that I have utilized this particular field from the first table. Let me close this. Now I will go ahead and choose the, in fact, not the second, but the third file, product details. The very, very useful variables like profit, quantity, and sales. I'll use profit. Let me not use profit, I'm sorry. Let me first use sales here. So I'm going to drag and drop the variable sales. Fantastic. You can see here, the variable sales is coming from the first file. The variable sales is coming from the second file. You can use quantity and put it next to sales. Thirdly, you can use the variable profit and put it next to quantity. You have state-wise distribution of sales, quantity, and profit. Because I have utilized information from the third file, what Power BI does is it puts a tick mark with an orange circle. Let me close this. I have brought in the third file as well, which is called as order details. Let me expand this. You just have name and number of orders. I'm going to use the third. I'm going to use number of orders coming from the third file. Drag this and drop it here. So what I've effectively done here is to pick up selected variables from each of the files. Now, as you can clearly see here, because Power BI is putting a tick mark against each of these files, we have utilized information for all the 3 files. Now, what this does is it gives me the overall consolidated report of the state-wise distribution of sales, quantity, profit, and orders. Your client is going to just look at this and feel very happy. In fact, he may feel that you have not done much work because he is under the impression that all of these are present in one table and you have just dragged and dropped the variables to create this particular report. The secret lies in the data model that we have created. The secret is this. So because we have created this data model and we have successfully established the relationship, therefore we are able to create the view that you're seeing in the report view. But the client or your boss does not have to know the background story. All that he sees is this. So this is the final result. state-wise distribution of sales, quantity, profit, and orders, each of these fields coming from diverse sources. So this is how you can create a data model, and we can go ahead and create attractive visualizations, create graphs, tables, matrices, publish dashboards, because we have created a data model wherein 3 different files are talking to each other. You can use and pull additional files as well if you feel that the variables, the existing variables, are limited or inadequate. That is entirely up to you. With this, I have come to the end of today's view. Just to summarize the discussion that we have had, we've seen what exactly is data modeling. One thing that I'd like to draw your attention to here is that we also use the word model in machine learning. The idea of model is different when we speak about machine learning. There we build machine learning models like regression, logistic regression model, neural network, or decision tree, or support vector machine. That's a completely different idea of a model. Here in Power BI, when we use the word model, essentially we are talking about creating a relationship between 2 tables. So data modeling is a feature which is used to connect multiple data sources in a BI tool using a relationship. A relationship defines how data sources are connected with each other, and from there we can go ahead and create interesting visualizations on multiple data sources. Thank you very much for watching this particular video. I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.